Someone solves the problem of fixing nitrogen. Ammonia is produced. Half the world gets fed. It works, so we tell ourselves a story that the path that got there must be reconstructable, clean, learnable, transferable. A pipeline. But that's the myth, because the real path wasn't a line. It was rough, fragmented, historical, full of accidents, pressures, detours.
We built every institution, schools, courts, expertise, science, on one assumption, that reasoning can be told apart from its imitation. That there is a difference between someone who understands and someone who merely retrieves. That assumption is now collapsing. This series traces exactly how and why, from Frege to ChatGPT. The pipeline of meaning traces the 200-year attempt to make sense, meaning, and all higher-order thought auditable, and the slow, elegant proof that it cannot be done.
It doesn't matter where you are in life, in conversation, in love, in conflict, in work. Interpreting others and yourself is not optional. You are doing it all the time. When someone hesitates, you read intention. When someone speaks, you infer belief. When someone repeats a pattern, you call it personality. And when you look at yourself, you don't just see behavior, you see reasons, motives, something behind what you do. But here's the problem. This kind of interpretation doesn't just track what's there, it adds something. It carries projections, structures that enrich what we see. Imagine two people, Georgie and Paulo. They behave exactly the same way, same words, same actions, same timing. And yet, you might say, Georgie understands, Paulo is just repeating. Nothing changed in their behavior. What changed is what you see inside it. This video is about how that projection happens, because it is not random, it is not arbitrary, it follows escalation. There is a ladder. We don't just jump from behavior to mind in one step. We climb. This becomes practical the moment understanding Georgie starts to mean something very specific. Not just that he gives the right answers, but that he is familiar with the structure behind them. You assume that Georgie didn't just arrive at anti-creationism as a position. He traveled through a conceptual path. That he engaged at some level with the theoretical architecture of Darwinism, that he can activate that framework when needed, move within it, adjust it, apply it, beyond the immediate case. In other words, you treat his responses as anchored in a system.
Now, how does that escalation from behavior to mind happen.
What is thinking? Let's start with a condition that makes the question interesting, and not just academically so. We believe, most of us, that thinking can be understood, not perfectly, not always, but in principle. When your neighbor does something that seems, from where you stand, less than fully rational, takes a decision you wouldn't take, follows a path that looks like a detour from his own stated goals, you don't throw your hands up and say, unknowable. You try to figure it out. You reconstruct. You imagine what he must have believed, what he must have wanted, what picture of the world he must have been working with for that move to make sense.
There is a game philosophers play when they are losing. They take the thing that is defeating them, the thing that will not stay still, the thing that slips through every net they build, and they give it a new name, a technical name, a name that sounds like a solution, but is really just a very precise description of the problem. Carnap did this, and in doing it, he accidentally founded a science. The problem was this: two people can mean different things by the same word. Not just different associations, different structures, different internal arrangements that would, if you could see them, look like different architectures. Same surface, different load-bearing walls. He called it intentional isomorphism, the idea that meaning is not just what a word picks out in the world, but the route it takes to get there. The cognitive path, the internal grammar that fires when the word lands. To say that two expressions can be extensionally identical but intentionally different, you have already committed yourself to something. You have committed yourself to the existence of an inner code, a hidden structure. Something inside the mind that is doing work that the outside cannot show you. You have posited the existence of the thing that cognitive science would spend the next 50 years trying to find. Carnap thought he was doing semantics. He was drawing the map of an interior that no one had instruments to enter yet. The instruments came later. The brain scanners, the reaction time studies, the computational models. But the shape of the room was already there, drawn in the language of modal logic, in the dry notation of meaning postulates, in the philosophical problem of why someone can believe one thing and deny its equivalent. The ghost was posited before anyone looked for the body, and we are still looking.
When you conclude that the investment is safe or the candidate is lying, the base assumptions of your reasoning have to be organized in a way that the work of the premises is actually doing enough work to carry the conclusion. One must be able to trace that. There has to be a path, visible, followable, auditable. And we have words for people who can do this. We call them rigorous, precise. We say they know their stuff. And we have other words for people who reach conclusions without that path being visible, who arrive at the right answer or to the wrong one through a process that cannot be reconstructed. We call them confused or lucky, or less charitably, a parrot. This distinction between someone who lifts a conclusion from a clear axiomatic base and someone who merely follows a pattern they cannot account for, is not a new concern. It is in fact one of the oldest concerns in the Western philosophical tradition. And it is the concern from which analytic philosophy was born. The birth of analytic philosophy rested on a belief. This is the game we have always played. Start with something concrete. Imagine you are negotiating. The other person says they care about fairness. They say it confidently. They believe it in some sense. But then you watch what happens when fairness costs them something. Suddenly, a special case, a reason this particular situation is different. You file that away. You try it again from a different angle. You propose a scenario where being fair would benefit them. Now they are enthusiastic. Fairness is important, always has been. You are not listening to what they are saying. You are mapping the shape of what they actually believe. Finding the load-bearing walls, the places where the structure is solid versus the places where it bends. We can call it cognitive archaeology. You are reverse engineering a logic.
What is thinking? We assume the question has an answer, not just philosophically, practically. Every time you try to figure out why your neighbor did something that makes no sense to you, you're betting that there's a logic in there somewhere. Something that, if you could just see it clearly enough, would make the whole thing click. That bet is not crazy. It's actually one of the most load-bearing assumptions of human life. But here's what happens when we try to cash it in scientifically. We build a model of thought. Then we realize the model needs a model. Then that model needs a language to run in. Then that language needs rules. Then the rules need grounding. And at each step, we're not getting closer to thinking. We're adding another layer of explanation on top of the last one, each one slightly covering what came before, like a book that has been translated so many times that nobody alive has seen the original. The meaning is still traveling, but the source is gone. And the strange part is, we keep going, because stopping feels worse than the detour. That's not a failure of science. That's what thinking does when it tries to think about itself. We call consciousness the process of referencing back, the mind catching itself in the act, turning its own operations into objects of attention. But every time it does, it adds another layer, another translation, another frame around the frame. Which means consciousness is not the place where thinking finally becomes clear. It is where the contradictions become lived as a self-problem.
Describing mechanisms is not the same as capturing what makes a thought a thought. Now the question remains, for a strict behaviorist, the ambition of further may already seem excessive, even suspicious. Why posit internal structures, representations, or a language of thought? Why do that at all?
From this perspective, functionalism risks reintroducing precisely what earlier empirical psychology worked so hard to eliminate: hidden mechanisms, theoretical entities that cannot be directly observed. In my article, Skeletons in the Closet of Natural Language Semantics, I argue that our semantic theories do work. We don't lose all constraints. We don't become hermeneutic anarchists. But not without a transcendental condition. Some shared internal framework has to be presupposed as a condition of intelligibility. In the history of philosophy, certain critiques of Tarski move in a similar direction. Etchemendy, for instance, argues that the model theoretic account of consequence does not truly ground necessity. It works only because we already rely on an informal grasp of what following necessarily means. The semantics does not generate that notion, it presupposes it. Davidson's move solved the problem of interpretation by smuggling in normativity. Assuming rationality of peers seems easy, but is it when it is not a peer?
That preceding is transcendental in the precise sense. It's the condition of possibility for the mapping to happen at all. You cannot construct the probe without already inhabiting, at least provisionally, something like the space the other person's grammar lives in. You project a conceptual landscape, and then, only then you test whether theirs matches, deviates, surprises. So what the empirical turn recovered wasn't just minds over formal structures. It recovered the unavoidability of a prior framework, a base space that has to be shared enough, assumed enough, phenomenologically inhabited enough, before any grammar can become legible to another person at all.